Yeah, we're live. I think it's gonna be a long day, but it'll be fun. It's 8 o'clock. I'm here for the 12-hour mini marathon live feed. That's right. We're gonna do this for 12 hours. Actually, we're gonna be bouncing back and forth to different locations and stuff. And by locations, I mean different areas of the house. I'm also gonna try something I haven't done before on the mobile app. I was working or talking with Ben from the car farm. Shout out to the car farm guys. He sent me a thing that showed me how to possibly have other people on the live feed on the screen, but it only works on the mobile app. So I might try to do that because hey, we got nothing but time, right? So right now we want to start out with a discussion. We're going to do some project upgrade or some project updates. So guys will be happy to know, guys that have been watching this channel. I've had an ongoing situation with the Silverado that I have. It's a 2002, and the battery has been problematic. Oh, my light. What? Use my stick. There we go. Wow. It's good. It's going to be like that. So the battery's been going dead, been draining overnight. So I finally figured out what's going on. I found out what the circuit is that's making it drain, and it turns out, drum roll, it's the radio. Although guys that know about this might also think, well, it's probably not the radio; it's probably the body control module. But we're going to find that out also. But yesterday, after working on the Metro for a while, I brought the truck back home and finally decided, look, I'm not carrying a spare battery around. I'm not jumping it all the time. I'm not having to run it on the battery charger overnight and all that stuff. So what I did was I finally just took the meter. I went and bought a meter and finally, we just connected to the negative and the negative terminal on the battery and the negative wire, and then just started pulling fuses. And for a while, when I first started doing this process, I was like, okay, well, it could be this one. I'll try this one. And I jump over this one. I'm like, look, I started with all the fuses under the hood. Let's just start doing it. Let's make this happen. So I just grabbed some needle nose. I'm like, okay, nope, not that one. Nope, not that one. Not that one. Not that. And finally got to the radio and I pulled that. Hey, look, the draw was not there. And the draw was not excessive. It was, I don't know, 2 amps or whatever. It was not very much. Well, it was enough to drain the battery, obviously. And so I have the fuse out of it now. So I'm going to check and see. In fact, we'll do this in between this one and our next live feed. I'll go out and try to start it, but I'm hoping that it starts and it's not draining anymore, and that the battery is sufficiently charged that's not going to be an issue. I'm hoping that the draining cycle hasn't hurt this battery. This is actually a new battery that I bought, so it should still be good. But it was nice to see because after you've pulled 15, 20 or 30 fuses or whatever, to actually see a change, you're like, oh wait, that's it. And wait, did I hit the probes? What happened here? So you duplicate it like you do, the scientific method. If something happens and you see a change, you replicate that and go, oh yeah, it's definitely that. So I took out the offending one, and we're going to see. I've got a neighbor right around the corner that actually rebuilds or refurbishes the instrument clusters on these things. So I'm going to go over and talk to him and ask him if what he's seen, what's causing this stuff, if those things might be related. Maybe he knows about the radio. Honestly, I don't care about the radio because I very rarely do I ever turn it on. Even on my long drives to West Tech, I don't listen to the radio. I just listen to myself think or talk. So I don't care that that's there or not there. I could take it out and put some aftermarket thing in if I wanted to do that. But like I said, that's not part of my thing. The only thing I really use it for is the clock. But you have a phone with you everywhere you go that tells you what time it is. So that's not really an issue. I don't care if it's never there. If that solves the problem, that's fine. If it's a body control module or also related to something that's going on with the dash all seems to be working, and that's not an issue. But I'm happy that going through that procedure. So thank you for the guys that were recommending that. And also, obviously, I went onto YouTube to figure out how to find out the draw on the system. And that worked out. This thing still has a check engine light, which is the next thing that I need to fix. And then hopefully I can get it back on the dyno and make the thing work the way that it's supposed to work. So I can do both, so I can put the blower back on there and show, hey, look, it does the same thing there as it did in the other place. And then also do the test on the fuel mileage test on the electric water pump and the electric fan stuff, which will be cool. Because it would be nice, the nice thing about the thing not getting great mileage, because it's sub 20 on the freeway, which I think it should be higher. And I think that part of the reason is it doesn't have any timing in it, because that it has pulled a bunch of timing because of whatever's going on with it, the knock sensors or whatever. If we can get another 2 miles per gallon, that's a 10% increase. And so that's good. That's a 10% reduction in fuel costs. That's good. Especially considering how much fuel it goes through and how expensive gas is. So that's that will be a good deal. So and I like doing that kind of back-to-back testing. Obviously, that's kind of what I do. And so that's good. It's always good information. On the Metro yesterday, I went over and put the new ground wire on it for the battery, and it starts right up, and that works all good. I made sure I've got a little cordless, like whizzy wheel, a little sander disc deal, and went and cleaned off the terminals on the body, basically. So it just had like a little sheet metal screw or whatever holding that. So I moved that position to another ground that it had from the factory, cleaned all that off, cleaned the terminals off, and put that back on there. And all that worked out fine. The other thing that I did was I wanted to verify that I checked the battery voltage. The battery was new. Checked that the alternator was working, started it up. Obviously saw a change in voltage from 12.5 up near 14 volts so the alternator's working. And then I wanted to verify that the water pump was working. So I basically idled the motor until this thing warmed up, and then we could see coolant start to flow in there. And then I checked the fan. I didn't get the fan to come on through the switch. Both the temperature switch for the gauge and the temperature switch for the fan activation are there on the thermostat, and they're hooked up, but I didn't get the fan to activate. So I don't know if I didn't let it get hot enough. The gauge isn't working on the dash cluster. That thing might just be sitting there. I haven't even pulled it out yet to figure out if it's not plugged in or whatever. I want to do that. But what I did was just jumper the fan. So I disconnected the fan from the harness plug, and then I just connected those to the battery, and the fan works fine. And you could, it's drawing heat out and stuff. So that part of it is working. I'll get I'll hook I'll hook the cluster up and see if that was working. If not, I'm going to put a mechanical gauge on it. And then I just don't want it to sit there and overheat. If the fan switch isn't going to work, which I think it should. If it doesn't, then the option is I'll just put a mechanical fan switch on it and turn it on. And so, that's an easy fix. But I like the fact that it's working. I like the fact the water pump's working. The motor seems to be running good. Now the thing just needs to get a bath, and it looks like the front cover has kind of clearance itself, but I'm going to trim away the areas. I'm going to trim away the areas where it's rubbing. So we'll be able to fix all that. And then the other thing I was looking at is when with the hoods open, you can look into the engine compartment. The way that they have the motor mount on the front of the motor, connecting the motor to the chassis, that mount will make a good spot for a bracket to mount the AMR supercharger. And there's already a pulley set up. The damper has two pulley positions, one that's driving the alternator and the water pump, and the other one's driving nothing. So that probably was for AC or something, or maybe power steering if these things had power steering on them. But it's going to be perfect for driving the little AMR supercharger. So I just got to hook that up and make it adjustable so we can obviously put tension on the belt. The other thing that's nice is the guys have been asking me, well, what pulleys are you going to run on this? I'm like, I'm just going to run the pulley that came with the blower. We will have, in this particular instance, we will more than likely have trouble keeping the boost down low enough and not having to worry about making enough boost on this thing, because the motor doesn't make very much power. It's only rated at 49 horsepower at the flywheel. So it's not a very powerful motor. The XFI isn't, with that little tiny camshaft in there. And we don't need to spin it to, 15, 18,000 RPM like we did on the flow test, on the AMR supercharger flow test, when we ran it with the LS. And people still ask, hey, why didn't you run that into the motor? Like, it's a 150 horsepower blower and it's a 440 horsepower motor at that time. So why, that doesn't equate. All you do is restrict it. But when you're running that blower into a 49 horsepower motor, it'll be really easy to make boost. In fact, like I said, we'll spin the blower at 8 or 10,000 RPM, probably something like that, and it will still make more than enough flow to oversupply the flow needs of this particular motor, because it just doesn't make very much power and it's not very big. And we get that comment and question more often, a comment, but we get that comment a lot too. Oh, that blower will only supply this kind of displacement. Well, it's not really displacement. I know it's a positive displacement supercharger, so I understand the confusion, but it's a flow rate thing. So if you have a 2-liter motor that only makes 85 or 90 horsepower, that blower will still support that displacement. Or if you have a 1-liter motor that's a Formula One style motor that's running 18,000 RPM and makes 500 or 600 horsepower or whatever, it's not going to do that. It's not going to support that. So it's a power output and a flow rate thing much more than it is a displacement thing. I know that the displacement and the power output are often correlated, but we can have not very efficient bigger motors, and we can have very efficient smaller motors. The one guy brought up the little 300 horsepower Toyota motor. Well, is it going to be able to do this? No, that's a really good 4-valve design, a modern 4-valve design with a turbo on it, and that's a whole different thing than this 2-valve, and not even just a 2-valve, but a 2-valve XFI. So the camshaft barely opens the valves; it barely lifts them off. We can do the other non-XFI cam upgrade, which is an easy, probably bolt-in kind of deal. So a cam upgrade would definitely make more power. We can do ported heads and that stuff. But in addition to, because the reason that I bought this car is so that I can run this AMR on it. But the other reason that I bought this is so that I can swap the turbo sprint motor into this car and run that motor and do testing for Bonneville, because we need to make a certain amount of power with this turbo motor. Given the and like I've talked about for Bonneville, I always work backwards from whatever the speed that we need to go. Okay, what's the class we're looking at? What are the speed records? What kind of car do we have? And then what kind of gearing do we have? What gearing do we need to make that speed? Okay, so we have to have this tire size and this final drive and this 5th gear in this case, because we have a 5-speed. We multiply all that out and go, oh, okay, look at this RPM, it will do that. Okay, so how much power do we need to make at that RPM to go that speed? Having done Bonneville a lot, I have a fairly good idea on how much power we would need to go that fast. And then we calculate the power output and go, okay, we need to make 100 horsepower, 200 or 300, whatever the number is. Can we do that? Yes, with this motor, we can make that amount of power to go that speed. And so how do we go about doing that? And so we look at this, the thumbnail that I have up for this first hour. By the way, shout out Monster Energy Drink. They don't really sponsor this, but they should, because we're doing it for 12 hours. So they should sponsor that. But the real guys that are here are supporting the channel. Guys from Brian Tooley Racing and Airflow Research and SCAT and Vortec and stuff. But but Monster guys, you really should be here for this. So, come on. I got this car also so that we could do testing on that motor, so we could get the power output up to an area that we need to use and will work for running the car in a different chassis, in a car that's set up with cage and all that stuff for the guys. Shout out to the Hudson boys out there. So we can run that motor in a car with the right transmission and right gearing so that we can run that speed at Bonneville. We won't use this Metro XFI motor. We'll use the Turbo Sprint motor. And the other thing I need to do is I haven't put any ring gap in this. I don't know what the ring gap is from the factory. We've already run a lot of boost on this thing. I say we run, I don't know, 10 or 11 pounds or something, not very much, but we've increased the power output a lot on that Turbo Sprint motor. And so now we'll set it up because I have two of them. I have the original one that was in the Sprint that we set the speed records at the Maxton mile with. And then I have another one where that isn't together yet, but it has forged rods and forged pistons. And then we obviously would put head studs and that kind of stuff in it. And then that way we could really kind of turn it up if we wanted to do that. The thing that I'm worried about that on the head gasket, but I think that there's some MLS stuff that we could put on there. And then we could really kind of turn it up with a, ported head and cam and make good, a fairly good amount of, and again, when we're talking about a 1 liter turbo sprint motor, we're talking about going like adding 5 or 10 horsepower NA, and that being a big deal because relatively speaking, as a percentage, that's a pretty good amount. But with the right turbo size and now our ability to control it when we put some sort of standalone management system on it, then I don't have to go through all of the rigmarole that I had to do with trying to trick the vane meter and all that. It was just not ideal. And I did a compound turbo system on this way back, but did that trying to utilize the factory vane meter and stuff. And it's just not, that's just not really the right way to go. And it doesn't, for Bonneville, the nice thing about Bonneville is it doesn't really need to have a compound system on it. It just needs to have a turbo on it that's sized to make, 200 horsepower, let's say. Because if we could make 200 horsepower, we would be doing pretty good. I think we'd be making lots of power. So let's see what you guys got going on for this first hour. It's almost time, T-minus 2 minutes, all the power. I'm very excited about the truck. Hopefully it would be nice if it's just that, if it's just the radio, I could take that out or replace it or whatever, just replace it with an aftermarket radio or something. Or just not at all, like I said, because I don't care. But I'm thinking probably also something else. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Is it the body control module? Is it the dash? What else do you think it is? We'll get a poll going. Okay, can the AMR500 supercharged 1 liter XFI motor make more than 100 horsepower? So can we double the power output? Can we get into triple digits, as it were? Triple dig. Okay, who's going to be here with me for the whole 12 hours? All the power. Aaron, smoking. What's going on? And the marathon begins. Todd, what's going on? How many pounds a minute will the AMR make? It depends on what boost level and what RPM, but according to the flow rates that I got, and then also I bought one, and the guys from Sweden, the guys from Kenny Bell, flow tested one. It will support 150 horsepower. Congratulations on finding the issue. I hate finding weird gremlins. Yeah. I mean, that setup, even though it takes a while to pull all the fuses out, excuse me, and I'm sure that all these fuses that I pulled out, probably this was the first time that they've ever been pulled out. So sometimes it takes a little wiggling. You worry about breaking the fuse and stuff, but they all eventually came out with a little bit of wiggling. Got to wiggle it. Just had to switch to the fuse for the radio inside the cab, and we'll only forget it sometimes. Yeah. Geo Prism was the best car I owned. Metro is cool. Yeah, I like the Metro better than the Prism, but they had I thought that they had turbo versions of one of those, the Prism or the Storm. I need to get my Jeep back out tomorrow and do some major tuning under boost. Good. That's always good. I may take a break and play doctor with my girlfriend. We'll have you on in the background. So I'll be creeping. What vehicle is this on again? The AMR500 is a Metro XFI, the little hatchbacks. Takes a lot to get them hot. I was wondering about that. I mean, obviously the thing's not putting out, given its power output, it's not putting out too much in the way of BTUs. So it probably does take a while. I just didn't like having it sit there idle and not know what the temperature is, because I could feel that the radiator was hot. It was the thermostat had already opened and started to circulate water. I just didn't know how much longer it took past that point to where the fan came on. I would suspect if it's like OEM stuff that it's going to be, the thermostat opening and then the fan switch on is going to be probably in the range of 20 degrees or something, like 20 or 30 degrees. The front one is for AC. That's kind of what I figured. We're sure you're going to have a cam made for it. We'll have a cam ground, we'll probably we'll start with a non XFI camshaft and have a reground done by the guys at Schneider. 326 big block. That must be a Pontiac, right? A Pontiac big block. I didn't think the 326 was a big block. I thought only the 455 and the 428 and the 421. But then what about the 400? Chevy Aveo valve springs. Is that what the hot ticket is? How much power does it take to turn the thing? Again, it depends on that video is up. You can see the power consumption test that we did on it. What's your opinion on my setup? 5.3 LM7 board 30 over street use weekend toy ported. You ported the Trailblazer SS intake manifold. 92 millimeter throttle body, Summit big nasty cam, text speed 220 as cassettes. All of that will work. Are you happy with that? The idle quality and stuff of that camshaft? Plus 2 forged pistons and 4 rods. Yeah, the Geo Storm, right? Was the turbo version. That's a 4-cylinder though, right? The only reason I have an entertainment system is GPS. Yeah, I just am not. Her thing is always blaring in her car. And the boys obviously too, but not, I just don't listen to that. Funny Geo Metro story. A high school friend's mom had one, a sedan, and she drove that car around with 0 oil for an entire day and didn't even realize it. It lasted for years after topping it off. Get a cheap Harbor Freight infrared gun. I have one of those already. Perfect day for you to do a long stream travel. Oh, you're driving from Missouri to Tennessee? All right, cool, man. On the road again. They are enough to be stable up to 8,000. Will they allow more cam lift then? Like, what is the coil bind different than the factory spring? Google Pontiac 326. I don't need to Google Pontiac 326. I know what Pontiac 326 is. I have a Pontiac 350, and the 326 is this one step down from that in terms of displacement. What does the XFI put to the wheel stock? I don't know. I haven't run this one, but given its 49 horsepower rating, I'm thinking that it's going to be in the 30s, somewhere in the high 30s, maybe. Any recommendation on water pump and oil pump for a turbo B16? The OEM, we use the factory OEM stuff on all the turbo B16s that we did. Seems like a decent supercharger for a motorcycle. Yeah, it's a supercharger for anything. That they're really common for air-cooled VW stuff. There's a lot of, if you go to the AMR group chat or whatever, there's lots of AMRs running on various things. Because it's positive displacement, I would argue that it's not something that I would use for very high boost levels, certainly not without an intercooler. Maybe as a draw through or as a blow through with a carbureted deal, so you're getting some charge cooling. But an intercooler would be a good idea for something. You know, if I'm running 10 pounds on something, even with a turbo, I would be running an intercooler. And certainly on a root style blower, I would be running an intercooler up. Haven't put it all together yet. I have the Chupacabra and the Big Nasty to choose from. If I was using that combination as a driver, I would pick the Chupacabra over the Big Nasty for idle quality. But, you know, some guys want the chop. What size is the single injector? Does anybody know what size that injector is? I don't remember off the top of my head. What I do is when I go down the rabbit hole on stuff, I usually take we'll take a binder and then make one that's dedicated to that, so that I can, because sometimes, and in the past, what I've been doing is I would, turn the page to write up stuff. And then I have like 6 or 8 of these, and I never know which one it is. So I got to do a dedicated one and write on the outside of it, hey, this is the Metro Bonneville project or whatever. And so that everything I put in has to go in that one, so I know how to go access it. Otherwise, I have to look through 6 or 8 of them and go through all the pages of notes that I've made. Oh, look, there's information on the Boss 302 or on the 455 Buick or whatever. I'll have to remember that next time I'm looking for it. So dedicated ones are a much better way to go. So since we have time, let's see. Geo Metro XFI injector size. Let's see. Um, 300 and looks like it's a 60-pound injector at 43 psi. At least that's the information I'm getting. How fast will it go? How fast will the Metro go? Mine went 119 in the standing mile. The Sprint did turbo, but the Metros, obviously this XFI isn't going to go anywhere near that. My Sprint base model was driven for 3 months by adding water in the morning, driving 12 miles to work, and filling up before I got home because the head gasket was bad. I'm not worried about the chop. I want one that will perform good down low. I would say that the Chupacabra would be good for that. I'm at work till 9 today. Looking forward to some project footage. Yep. The first video is up on the Metro. Richard, are you familiar with the Suzuki 660 3-cylinder turbo snowmobile motor? Somebody mentioned that, and it might be you. Um, I'm not familiar with that because I don't do snowmobile motors. But somebody said that that was a version of this motor. Is that true? Is it this 2-valve, just a smaller version of this 2-valve motor? Yeah, it's Bo, it's a single 60-pounder because this is a throttle body injected. Unlike the Sprint motor is port injected. But the Metro XFI has a single throttle body, and I think from what I was reading, the 60-pound flow rate is at 43 psi, but they don't run that injector at 43 psi. It's, at least that's what I was reading. I haven't verified this yet. The way I understand the dyno you did, the Summit did better down low than the Chupacabra. I didn't compare the big nasty cam to the Chupacabra. I don't think on the same combination. Yes, it is the same. 660 was a class of car engine. Yeah, the Kai class cars, I know about those, but you were mentioning a snowmobile though. What are you going to do about better fuel delivery? Well, the Sprint motor that I have that would eventually go in this has port injection, and so we could put whatever injectors in there we want on that combination, on the turbo combination for Bonneville. To improve the fuel flow on this one, we're going to increase the fuel pressure on the single injector, or put water methanol injection on it. Or also, the guys from Holly were supposed to send me, and I sent them a message yesterday. They were supposed to send me one of their single throttle bodies with big injectors, either one or two in it. I think two, for the 300 Ford. And so that has more than enough fuel flow to support any power level that we would run on this throttle body injected deal with the AMR500 supercharger, or a compound setup if we wanted to do that. Could you use VTEC to cause chop at idle and dramatically turn off when the throttle is applied? Yeah, if you wanted to idle on the bigger cam, it would definitely have chop. Richard, this is literally the only case possibly those vortex generators could possibly work. Remember those intake restrictions that swirl air? Yeah, if you look at, Bo, if you look at a factory GM throttle body injection, they have those swirl vanes. Theirs are under the throttle body, like on the Crossfire setup on the L83 motors. They have swirl vanes under those to do exactly that. They're there to improve fuel mileage. Wait, start over. I just got here. Okay. As long as you're saying that in the first hour and not on the 11th hour. The 660 is an F series. They have some similarities, but not enough to interchange parts. Okay. Is the 660 it's not a 4-valve motor, is it? Is it a 2-valve or a 4-valve? They stuffed an available car engine into a sled to have an easy way into the 4-stroke sled market. Okay, cool. Donald, it would also work on a 292 6-cylinder Chevy as well, because you'd have to do an adapter because the carburetor mount for the 300 I think is different than the Ford is, but an adapter would work. So you're just supplying fuel to it. You could use VTEC to VTEC without having a VTEC head. That's how amazing VTEC is. How are you going to activate VTEC without having a VTEC head? Because you have to have the 2 cam profiles to activate that. Yeah, I mean, I'm excited. I like on the Metro, somebody was saying that they're excited about it. I like seeing the things come back to life, and knowing the things that I know and applying them and being able to fix things. Easy things like just cleaning it is a big deal. But now I have to put the wheels and tires on it, but I want to paint the wheels. I wish I had a bead blaster or something so that I could at least clean them up. I do have a pressure washer that maybe I could take some of that stuff off with. AMR is cool for low horsepower applications, but does it blow hot air? It is I can't remember if we measured. No, we didn't measure discharge temperature, but we will when we run it on the car. But a roots blower, that would be kind of typical of a roots blower. Some are 12 valves. Okay. Green bass. Some guys do that. They run VTEC eliminators for some reason, and I don't know why you would ever do that. Maybe they're trying to get rid of. I've seen on some of the race applications where guys are trying to get rid of valve train weight, I guess, to run more RPM, and maybe for an application where you're only running from 7 to 10,000 or whatever, that might be okay. But getting rid of a system that allows you to have more average power production, it's just not a good thing. I've ridden and raced Suzuki motorcycle engines. They make huge power per cc. The snowmobile motors are reliable, well up to 500 horsepower. These 350 horsepower in planes a lot. Look at Edge performance. 660 double overcam turbo made roughly 65 horsepower. Okay. Yeah, if you have a 4-valve motor or twin cam motor, even a 3-valve motor, that's a lot better than this. This 2-valve head is not even great as far as 2-valve heads go, and it's nowhere near what a good 4-valve head is. I like the electric supercharger guy on YouTube. He uses a brushless RC car motor to spin the blower. Yeah, if you can spin the blower independent of the engine, that's good, because then you're outsourcing the power that's required to spin the blower, which is nice. That means you essentially have added that amount of power, and then if you have boost coming from the blower, you've added obviously a great deal more. They make media blaster attachments for pressure washers. Okay, I'll have to look into that. What platform are you going to use to tune it? I don't know. Probably a micro squirt or something. I don't know if the Holly will run a 3-cylinder. Thomas Knight did an e-charger in the 90s using 3 starter motors and an Eaton M62. That seems like a lot of work. I'm answering no because I thought it made 45 horsepower. Yeah, it makes 49 is what the XFI is rated at. Most blowers add up to 50%. Happily rooting for 123 horsepower. 123 is a lot. A lot more than 100, or 101. Richard, if you had to guess, do you suspect the intake exhaust flow on the head? I think I have flow data somewhere on the head. I'm sure that I do. I just would need to look it up. I can't remember off the top of my head what it was. The blower can hold a certain RPM as well. Yeah, that's what I mean. You can have any blower speed you want relative to engine speed, so that you can have more boost at a given engine speed relative. If you have a flow rate from the blower, you can have 15,000 RPM worth of blower output at 2,000 RPM engine speed, if that's what you want. D16 Y7 engine ran pretty good with a Y8 intake and a header. Adding the VTEC cam on the high profile allows more peak power, but rev limit needs to be raised to. High compression pistons can be fitted to stock rods. Feel free to share my base flow data. What was that? I don't have access to it right now. Can you bolt a 4-valve factory Suzuki head on a 2-valve head? It's been 20 years, but I seem to remember that was a thing. I think that the guys at the Hudson boys, I think, have made a 3-cylinder version of the 1.3 liter Suzuki 4-valve motor. I think that they did that. Where did you get the Deca 80s? The ones that I got were from Excel. 660 is a double overhead cam. Yeah, that's a completely different motor. Lowbuck D16 NA setup made of primarily trash. In Puerto Rico, we have 3-cylinder engines making 400 horsepower. Probably not this one, though. Are they 3-cylinder 4-valve motors? The Hemiport Sprint flows way better. What is that? I believe they had a car in Japan that came from the factory with a 4-valve on the same 1-liter block. Puerto Rico does mud races with the Suzukis. Guys run Honda intake manifolds and put a CAS on from a DSM to run coil on plug. I think the 16S single overhead cam Suzuki G16 head outflows the double overhead cam Swift head. No, I know that you sent it to me. I just don't know what it is. And if you know what the thing flows, just put the numbers down. Just put the numbers out there so people can see it. Yes, the puppies came to visit. Can the AMR500 supercharged 1-liter XFI motor make more than 100 horsepower? 83% are saying yes. And is it going to need ring gap? That becomes the question. It definitely will need some kind of ring gap, I think. What are you doing? Come here. Come here. Hello. Where's your brother at? What do you smell? I know. That's right. I cut my arm right there. You make sure it's okay, huh? Hello. Can you say hello? You gonna say hello? Say hi to everybody. Is that you? Can you see yourself? Oh, can you see yourself? What doggy is that? Hello. You gonna come in here and lay down? Oh, you gonna come in here? Hello. Hello. I know. You're a good boy. Huh? Okay, find a good spot. Find a good spot and lay down. So I run a garage shop, CNC machining and welding. In your opinion, what type of product are we missing out in the world? LS stuff is oversaturated. What about Ameribarrow stuff? I've seen some cool, like, billet-y looking manifolds and stuff for those things. You know, they're making them look like the Greddy stuff for the 2Js and other applications like that. We have faith you can get more than 100 horsepower. With a turbo, it's going to be a lot easier, I think. The Turbo Sprint Mark 1 head is hemispheric shaped chamber with candid valves. Is that the 87 that I have? Is that hemispheric shaped chamber that you're talking about? If it runs meth, it should push enough CFM to make 150 horsepower. Yeah, the blower will support that at high blower speeds. Although I don't know how long they last at these blower speeds. Few VW air-cooled guys run the AMR500 to the limit. Yeah, the puppies are awesome. Just pushes so much hot air, you have to pull timing or have amazing fuel. Well, the airflow, the blower spinning by itself doesn't heat the air up. So the air temperature primarily is a function of the pressure. So the big change in the temperature is Are you running like at 10 pounds? Obviously, the temperature is going to be a lot higher than it is at 5 pounds. We saw this on the M90, discharge temperature running only 5 pounds because we had such a good NA motor making 650 horsepower. That's what everyone says. Oh, the temperature's got to be really hot because you're spinning it at 20,000 RPM. No, it's not hot at 20,000 RPM because it's not making any pressure. The temperature buildup is from pressure. And so I would imagine, I'm certain that it's the same thing with this AMR500. It's not as efficient as a turbo is at any given pressure. And so the temperature change of 5 pounds on one versus 5 pounds on the other would be some kind of difference, but not like the difference is going from pressure to no pressure or going from a low pressure to a higher pressure. The pressure is the big thing. And then the efficiency of the way that it moves air is a much, much smaller function of the amount of change in temperature. So somebody was asking, so was asking about the flow rate. They flow 105 CFM at the maximum factory lift. The exhaust flows roughly 65. So what is that? Is that like at 300 or 350 lift? Is that where the rating is? If it makes 49 horsepower SAE net, then realistically it should make 65 to 75 horsepower gross. So twist it up to 16 to 18 pounds and it should top 101. If it makes 449 horsepower SAE net, then it should make 65 to 75 horsepower gross. How are you going up 50% in power from net to gross? I don't think you're going to see anywhere near that kind of a change. Richard, just hide the solenoids and hit it with 100 shot. That's an easy way to get to 100 horsepower, right? Is the pulley ratio from the stock size crank pulley going to be sufficient to spin the blower to the RPMs needed? I think it will be. I'm going to measure the crank pulley on the XFI and see, and I'll calculate it at speeds. But we're going to try it and see. The restriction makes the heat. Actually, compression makes the heat. That's the big thing. The pressure causes heat, and that's the big thing. That's the big part of the equation. And what determines the pressure, what determines the amount of boost that you run, is the amount of airflow from the blower, so the speed of the blower, relative to the NA power output of the combination. So if we make more NA power output and we're spinning the blower the same, the boost pressure goes down. If we have less NA output, the pressure goes up at any given blower speed. There's a compound turbo one by Alpha X and a few turbo ones doing 200 horsepower on stock internals and a reflash ECU. What kind of motor is that? That's not on a Metro XFI. Sprint is Mark 1, Geo is Mark 2. Okay, so the head that I have on my Turbo Sprint is the one to use. That's what you're saying. Are you running the throttle body before or after the charger? I don't know. Probably after, just because it's already there. Are you going to do an AMR versus turbo? Yeah, I think that would be a good test. I mean, if we can run 5 or 10 pounds or whatever from the blower and then do 5 or 10 pounds from the turbo, I just think that would be a good test. AMR500 Metro may have a race. Channel just tested an SC14 Miata. That's a motor that's 50% bigger and 50% better because it's a 4-valve motor and it has a bigger blower. So I don't think that's a realistic kind of comparison. I missed it, but are you going to use E85? We will run E85 under boost because we will try that in addition to running gas, as long as we have enough injector flow. if we put the throttle body unit with the bigger injector from Holley on there, we'll definitely try E85 because we have way more flow than we need in terms of fuel, and that will give us the ability to try that. And then it should run under boost. It definitely should like E85. So that's the flow rate at 300 lift. I'm sure that the sprint head went up at 400 and 500 lift. I just made a mistake and went to the junkyard to get a wire pigtail and came across a PROEJCT big block. I need another engine, but it's a big block and you almost have to get it, right? With a supercharger, you need to take care not to break the snout of the crank. Yeah, I guess that's a concern, although not with what we're doing on such a small supercharger and such a small parasitic drive. There's a guy using an AMR500 for a diesel, and he was able to get 10 pounds of boost with a custom pulley. The stock pulley won't get you far. I disagree with that because you can't make a universal statement like that. The boost pressure that you get is different on different motors based on their NA power output. And then we don't even know what the pulley sizes is on the stock one yet relative to whatever he had. So we got to measure all that out before we can make generalized statements. I used to work at a dive shop. I learned young how compression causes heat. Yeah, that's why they have to set all those tanks in water and fill them slowly. Otherwise, you have problems because that's a lot of pressure. That's a few 1,000 pounds of pressure in a scuba tank, right? Best cam for an LQ9. You got to give me more information. What is it you're trying to get done with your LQ9? And then I can tell you what kind of cam will get you there. More than likely, there's lots of different cams that will do what you need it to do. The NSR Truck Norris cam is best. I don't think that I would recommend that one for a 6-liter. Unless he just wanted to do it with stock springs. Turbo big block everything, even the sprint, right? Will there be any times today for general Q&A? That's what this is right now. So you can ask whatever question you want whenever you want. The way that the live feeds generally work, and that's the way that it worked today for all of these, is the first 10 minutes or so will be a discussion on some kind of topic. And then after that, it's Q&A. So you get to ask whatever question you want whenever you want. So that's why you're here. That's why we have the comment section open. Just ask your questions if you have questions. Max is out at 114 CFM at 500 and 85 CFM on the exhaust. Not every build has to be 1,000 horsepower turbo big block. That's right. Yeah. Ask about your project or your whatever engine build you got going on. I went back and watched some of the 4200 videos. Did I miss a video where he fixed the oil leaking and run more boost? No, you haven't missed that because it hasn't happened. And I should have known that when Mark and I were at the wrecking yard spinning the motor over. It was just shooting oil out because the valve covers were leaking. Is the Truck Norris cam the best for LQ9? It depends on what you're trying to get done. What you got to tell me what you're trying to get done with your 6-liter. There's no best cam. It's just what are you trying to get done? What do you need to happen? Do you want stock idle quality? Do you want to run the thing to 7,000 RPM? Do you want to make the most power? Do you want to make the most torque? Do you want to run a turbo? Not that that's really going to make any difference, but what is it you're trying to get done? And then we can help you out. You should compare the throttle body before and after the supercharger. That would be good, but it's a lot more involved than just moving it. I hear putting it before the supercharger is beneficial. Well, it would help with charge cooling, but the other thing that it does negatively is it displaces some of the airflow of the blower. Last time I went to the junkyard, I found a car that's the same color as mine, snagged some body panels that snowballed into a complete front end facelift. That's what happens, man. The most power, I have a 3600 stall. Okay, so you want a big cam then. So a BTR red hot cam would be good. The Summit Stage 4 cam, you could go really big and put the BTR Stage 4 LS3 camshaft in there, and it will make good power, especially with a 3600 stall. Do you have, what 6-liter do you have? Is it an LQ4, an LQ9? What heads do you have? What intake do you have? All that stuff is going to come into play. But any of those bigger cams will work. Just built my first engine. Congratulations. Gen 453. Will it blow up? And if so, how do I handle that kind of disappointment? That's the thing. You don't know until you run it. Richard, can I put the oil drain for my turbo on a small block 350 back into the fuel pump block off plate? Could put it in the pan, but the engine builder forgot to weld it to the pan before I went in. You can, but the drain hole for that is, I don't like that there's a buildup of oil in that area before it drains into the hole that's in that. But we've done that before. Have you ever seen an exhaust recovery turbine with a mechanical drive feedback the crank? I mean, I've seen it, but not. It's not something that's realistic for the average guy. I decided on a 400 small block Chevy with a 400 trans in my Impala with GT30s. Gonna slap it together in the next couple weeks and hit the road. Hasn't been on the road since 1980s. Good, get it running, man. I could take the pan back off, but trying to save some time to get the project going. You could take the front cover off too if you wanted to do it that way rather than the pan, but not to brag, but my 120 estimation was pretty good. So we got 2 more minutes, and then I'll be gone for like 5, and then I'll be back on. Then we will be back in action. Turbo cams. We're going to talk about turbo cams next. I was draining my turbos into the pan. The number 2 main, you have to watch for crank throw. Yeah, having the turbo drain be in the right direction of the spinning motor can be important. Stock steel pans can be punch and tapped. Yeah, you just put grease on the tap, and we did that a lot back in the day with the Vortex stuff. Are you grading the 12-hour thing? No, not yet. Not till we get into the 6th or 7th hour or whatever. Then you're like, oh, yeah, man, this is a bad idea. The big block didn't seem to do spinners. Hey, if it spins, it wins. If not, got to walk away. Interested to see how you do if it was carb. You just do a blow-through carb, although a blow-through carb for a turbo application is not cheap. So that's another thing to think about than compared to running at EFI. We will close out our poll at 85% saying yes, that they think we can reach triple digits with the AMR. I think with the AMR and an intercooler and E85, and then maybe the other cam, we might get there. So we'll end our poll there. I have a whole list. In fact, I have the list of the 24-hour marathon deal. So choosing 12, that should be real easy, right? 100.1 is more. That's it. If I see 100 on any of that, that would be good. The other thing you could do a blow-through carb with an enclosure, but then also unless you build the enclosure yourself, but the enclosure is also like, not cheap if you buy an enclosure. We got 30 seconds, and then I'll be right back. I'll be back. I need a go bag for the junkyard. So, hey, I know. That's right. It needs to be ready to go. We will have updates on all of your questions and answers in 5 minutes. I will be back.